Our sophomore year of college was spent meeting Shannon, and we hit it off right away. Her blue eyes, thick brown hair, and toned body made her look amazing, but her lively, witty, and happy demeanor were what truly captured my attention. After 3 months, we had a special moment together in my car beside the baseball stadium. We had become best friends. She wept happy tears when we finally made eye contact. It was awkward, yet lovely. I knew then and there that we were destined to be. I'm Stu, a contractor from a tiny town in the Midwest. My height is 6 feet, my weight is 187 pounds, and I have sandy hair and brown eyes. I own a prosperous remodeling company, and Shannon works as a music teacher at a nearby high school. We both have steady jobs and intend to soon begin a family. Our marriage was happy for the first 10 years. Our time in bed was rewarding, albeit not every day. Every night we had an agreement to cuddle, and it was always a pleasure to wake up with Shannon. I would do anything for her, no questions asked. But then something strange occurred, which left me feeling disturbed. Since the majority of our business is done in the warmer months, we took summer travels and vacations over the holidays. During my busy season, Shannon would periodically visit relatives or continued her teaching career. Going somewhere warm was our favorite wintertime getaway. In an attempt to patch things up during our marital crisis, we decided to spend 2 days at an all-inclusive spa resort in the Bahamas. But my impression was soon dispelled. I felt our marriage was perfect before we got on the plane. But the way a man stared at Shannon at the airport said otherwise. His acquaintance with her prompted suspicions, but they made no attempt to get in touch. I felt uneasy, but Shannon didn't seem to notice. The dude ended up sitting a few rows ahead of me on the plane. To my suspicions, Shannon chose to sit in the aisle rather than her typical spot by the window. Upon questioning her, she attributed it to a gastrointestinal problem. Citing her discomfort, I was able to move her seat with another passenger. But doubt churned in my stomach. I usually get a good night's sleep on aeroplanes, but on the Minneapolis to Miami flight, my nervousness kept me up. I pretended to sleep, but I was uncomfortable and couldn't get rid of it. Shannon and I packed our bags, and once in the air, I pretended to sleep while watching Shannon. She looked at me after 15 minutes, assuming I was asleep. Shannon stood up and headed to the toilet, thinking maybe I was mistaken. As they crossed paths in the aisle, I watched her interactions and noticed her fleeting touch on a man's shoulder, which confirmed my assumptions. Their smile and his hand on her waist, 2 obvious indicators of intimacy and familiarity, said volumes. My marriage was in jeopardy, and I was overcome with despair. What other way could she have betrayed us? I hoped that the issue would somehow become better as I fought to understand it during the flight. However, my suspicions were realized when I saw him sitting 5 seats back in his book on our journey to Nassau. Shannon returned to her customary window seat during the trip, indicating that things were getting back to normal. After renting a car and gathering our belongings, we arrived in Nassau and made our way to the hotel. Shannon was deep in concentration on her phone, so I was left to go through my feelings while I drove. I said, "Who are you texting?" "Just my mum and sis, letting them know we arrived." I'd rather see for myself. Isn't it funny how suspicions grow like snowballs? Our gorgeous accommodation had a view of the pool and the ocean. I realized I needed to take action to get my wife back while we were unpacking. I walked over to give Shannon a hug and a neck kiss. I said, "You know how much I love you." Shannon turned to face me, gave me a quick kiss on the lips, and said, "I love you too, baby." But her eyes didn't seem to be close. I told Shannon, "I'd never hurt you, or our marriage." She trembled. She avoided my eyes and muttered, "I know, Stu." I felt the struggle was getting to me. She would soon stray if she hadn't already. After letting her go, I hurried to the loo to try to clear my head. How did this come about? What was it that I overlooked? Is it too late, or can I save us? After I splashed my face, I turned back to see Shannon staring at me oddly. "Stu, I got my period and forgot tampons." "What? It just started, but this isn't normal. Maybe it's the excitement of the trip. I'll get some." She shut the door behind her. I hoped that might slow her affair for a while, but then doubt set in. This has never occurred before. Was her lie an attempt to keep distance? Seemingly so. and it broke my heart. She's not the lady I married, if that's true. Nobody could be more ruthless and deceitful than them, allowing me to organize and finance this vacation only to turn on me. I thought I was going insane and felt lost. After more than a decade of love, who was this woman? I turned on her phone after spotting it by the TV, but there was no password change. I began in the car and went through her communications with Anthony Eisner. Anthony: "Hey hot, can't wait to have you." Shannon: "You almost got us caught." Anthony: "I almost kissed you on the plane." Shannon: "Stu is asleep." Anthony: "I liked your squeeze." Anthony: "I'm in the lobby? Is Stu acting weird?" In the motel room, they carried on their talk. Anthony: "When will you leave Stu?" Shannon: "Stu is a good husband." Anthony: "But I'm better in bed." Shannon: "Stu's good, but I need more. Let's make a baby." Anthony: "I'll make you wet." Shannon: "Stu won't touch me, I'll lie about my period." Anthony: "He's so stupid." Shannon: "Don't call him that." Anthony: "Meet me in the lobby." Shannon: "Give me 5. I was stunned and thought about using the texts as leverage in my divorce, but ultimately I changed my mind. My entire personal info was on my phone. I'll let her handle this because she initiated the mess. I kept both phones, figuring that by the time she realized Mai was missing, I would have already left. My throat filled with bile and I puked. I took a quick look at the stunning Caribbean Sea, which was my delight 8 hours earlier. My world fell apart as I was getting ready for a romantic 2 weeks. I felt alone, stunned and furious, and I wanted to exact revenge on them both. I wanted more, but I knew I would get a divorce. I caught them kissing by the pool when I looked out the window. Grabbing my camera, I videotaped their antics with the intention of using it later. They had to be thinking of a way to keep me busy while they were together. I had an epiphany. Since they were going to be together for 2 weeks, why not get there first? I had to know how they were going to keep me occupied. I kept shooting until they kissed again, and Shannon turned to leave. To help me relax, I went back to the bathroom and switched on the shower. I would tell her that it made me feel better after the flight and helped me get over the smell of the aeroplane. After listening to the door open and close for 5 minutes, she exclaimed, "I'm back!" I brought water and tampons. "Great, I'll be out soon. Why bring water? The resort provides it." Then it occurred to me. She wants to give me medicine. I considered what to do. Should I decline, she will assume. She'll go with her lover if I drink and she's poisoned it. How should one proceed? After drying off, I pondered. Miserably worried about my time, she knocked. Was it for her date? Or for me? My temper flared, but I controlled it. She gave me an already opened bottle. She pretended to drink as she urged, "Stay hydrated," avoiding eye contact. In the loo, I surreptitiously drained and replaced it. Unaware of my ploy, she unpacked back in the room. I noticed a pretty dress and wondered what it was for. With a smile, she said she brought it. I pretended to drink as I made a suggestion at her dishonesty. "Aren't you tired?" I pretended to be sleepy, heart palpitating. "Yes, I'm a little tired," I remarked idly. Her real words were, "What time is dinner? Seating's in a couple of hours. Rest, I'll wake you." I tried to hide my disappointment by saying, "Okay, won't sleep long. Want time with you." Her response, "Love you," was less compelling. I heard her call someone, so I pretended to fall asleep. She laughed and added, "Happy I fooled her. I'll be at the S. Piper bar in an hour." Before hanging up, she said, "Can't wait. Love, bye," getting ready for her night out. As I pretended to sleep and watched her, anger simmered. I quickly looked through her purse after she washed and discovered unlabeled drugs. I took some, put it in my pocket, and went back to bed to wait for her to go. Alone, I hastily put on clothes and thought of a strategy. My first task was to obtain more convincing video proof of their extramarital affair. Secondly, I was going to screw around with their plans for the rest of the journey. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle this, but I was determined that they would both pay for their lies. Thirdly, I made the decision to end the trip early and start the divorce process right away. I had no choice but to act quickly to prevent Shannon from undermining our finances or taking further action against me. I quickly dressed, picked up my camera, and rushed out of the room. I wondered about the camera's capabilities as I walked to the pub, hoping it would function properly in the low light. When I got there, I took advantage of the palm trees to my advantage, so that I could see the bar clearly but still be hidden from view. I watched them from a distance, feeling a mixture of anger and betrayal as I saw Shannon, dressed in the daring red dress I used to love, embraced by a different guy. I had to summon all my self-control not to charge over, and face him right then. However, I had to remind myself that gathering proof was my main goal and not running the danger of getting into trouble. I felt intense pain seeing my wife act so sensually with another man, but I also managed to record every interaction between them with steady hands, every kiss, caress, and shared laugh. My resolve began to falter as the hours went by, and I considered going back to our room, which was now exclusively mine. But before I could get up to leave, I saw them hurriedly leaving the dance floor. As my curiosity grew, I stealthily followed them while keeping a safe distance to prevent being discovered. They stopped occasionally to share tender moments along the route, and I painstakingly documented everything they did. After a while, they reached his small room, which was far from the view of the ocean and very different from the opulence we had experienced together. I struggled to see glimpses of their chat through the partially drawn curtains, and my camera recorded every word they said to each other. I didn't let the discomfort get to me, since I knew that the proof I had acquired would be important in the coming days. I couldn't help but notice his enormous size as they undressed. I stayed outside and captured their seemingly never-ending passionate session, even though it was no justification for her betrayal or for letting him father a kid. He was not only handsome, but he also had extraordinary endurance. It was getting close to midnight, and I was expecting her to go when I heard their uncomfortable chatter. She worriedly inquired about the safety of the medications she'd given me. He suggested a dosage schedule to keep us apart while reassuring her that I would be able to sleep for hours on end without any harm. Their snide laughs made me even more enraged. After witnessing and hearing enough, I withdrew to my room, driven by a burning desire for vengeance and resolved to ruin their evening routine. I made a strategy. I would set up a distraction to get her away so I could face him by myself. How then can we keep them apart? A day at the spa sounded like the ideal fix. I would pretend to be loving Shannon while concealing my true intentions with a package. Although it was a dishonest action, I felt it was vital to give them the justice they deserved. Just as she's pressed me in the past, if she hesitates, I'll demand the spa package is non-refundable, playing on guilt to make sure she accepts. I'll take care of my lover's transgressions while she's distracted for hours. I got into my shorts and laid awake thinking of ways to get even, determined to face him. Shannon came back around 5 in the morning and cuddled up next to me in bed. I forced myself to stay awake, waiting for the right opportunity to confront her. She was sleeping by 7 when I woke up, had a fast shower, and headed to the spa, hoping it would open early. I looked for a box to occupy her while I took care of business. When I arrived, I made a snap decision and reserved the earliest appointment for a 3-hour session, valuing its length above its contents. Satisfied that Shannon probably needed rest after spending the previous night with her boyfriend, I set out to explore with the intention of surprising her. When I went back to the room at about 9 in the morning, Shannon was still asleep. I silently rummaged through her handbag and found her phone going through her texts. I saw one that Anthony had sent in the last hour. I controlled my growing rage, saying, "You were great last night. Any chance you could escape Stu for some afternoon fun?" But I knew it was almost over. I replaced Shannon's phone and moved in to give her a gentle forehead kiss as she started to stir. I said, "Good morning, sleepyhead." A glint of doubt flashed in Shannon's eyes as she grinned and yawned. "I'm sorry about yesterday for falling asleep so suddenly and ruining our dinner plans, but I have a surprise for you." She questioned, "What kind of surprise?" "I booked you a spa day as an apology for last night and to show you how much I love you," I replied. I saw her shudder a little, even in my sleepy state. I sensed she had misgivings about our connection. I softly asked, "Everything is fine, isn't it?" Shannon's answer to, "Or don't you like my gift?" was a tentative nod along with a small smile. She comforted me. "Oh no, I like it." But her smile wavered a little. "To allay any last doubts, I just wish you had asked me first. If I had done that, it wouldn't have come as much of a surprise to you," I said. Shannon nodded, appreciating my consideration. Look, this doesn't mean you need to run to the spa right now. I've made a reservation for O2W today so we can spend some time together. She stood up and went to the loo, and as I looked out the window, I saw Anthony talking to two young women at the pool. He didn't seem upset, even though I assumed Shannon had told him about my surprise. It occurred to me as I watched them converse that Anthony could have backup plans in case Shannon was unable to join him for some afternoon entertainment. Shannon and I were at the buffet about an hour later, putting food on our plates. Shannon chose to have only fruit and coffee while I packed mine full of breakfast foods. "Feeling hungry, babe? Is it because of your period?" I said. She said, clearly distracted, "Well, yeah, that might be it. I really don't have much of an appetite." My interest was piqued by her response to Anthony's message, but in the end it didn't really matter, because my preparations appeared to be working, particularly with her. We decided to take a stroll down the beach after breakfast. I took pictures of Shannon and the pom-poms using my camera. She felt uncomfortable, hinting at mounting guilt, even in spite of my comments. Sensing she was uncomfortable, I prodded. "What's wrong, babe? Are you okay?" "No, I'm fine, just a little tired," she said, her guilt palpable. "Would you mind if I went back to our room for a nap before my spa visit?" she inquired. Concealing my mounting annoyance, I assured her, "Sure, no problem, I understand. It's not ideal to have your period start during vacation." As she left without even a farewell kiss. I was buried in contemplation as I strolled along the shore, resolving to confront Anthony shortly. I saw two couples, one of which had the woman who had earlier chatted with Anthony. Two hefty males who looked formidable were now with them. It was clear from listening in on their chat that Anthony had persuaded them to go deep-sea fishing, making the women feel abandoned. They made an effort to comfort the women, but it was obvious that they felt excluded and undervalued. It was clear to me as they went past that Anthony had prevailed in the debate, which left the women feeling disappointed. I chose to cruise the beach for a while before going back to see how her boyfriend was doing. If Shannon did cancel her spa appointment to be with him, it would be a worry I had. But if so, maybe I could capture more footage of them together. I spent more than an hour walking around the hotel grounds before coming to Anthony's room. Inside, I heard voices, but not Shannon's. I steadily set up my camera and edged nearer to the window. I decided the best course of action was to install the camera outdoors on a ledge, facing into the room, and let it roll because it was riskier that way because it was daylight and more people could see me. I set it up and then looked for a good location to monitor his door to see who came out. Though it took a while, my perseverance paid off. The two women I had seen with Anthony at the pool and then at the beach with those guys emerged from his room beaming and giggling, as if they were guarding a tasty secret. A riot broke out. After they left, I got my camera and went back to my room. I had time to go over my notes because Shannon wouldn't be returning from her spa appointment for over an hour. I turned on my laptop once I was back in my room and moved all the movies I had taken since we had arrived. The majority included Shannon and the foolish person, but I also saw the video of those girls in his room. As it happens, they discovered a way to pass the time when their friends went deep-sea fishing. Anthony persuaded them to partake in a ménage à trois with him. It resembled an adult film on a shoestring. One watched and played alone while he got his way with the other. After that, they switched, and so on in the cycle. That's when I had another thought. I could strategically leave while Shannon was here, and try to put together what happened. I reasoned that she would probably try to make me look foolish again by medicating me tonight. And if I was lucky, she would wind up meeting Anthony at the bar, where they would dance and drink before he went back to his room. By the time they got to his room at the end of the night, they would be dead. If only I could sneak a tablet into their drinks. Perfect timing was required, but plans rarely work out as planned in real life. The plan's next phase was to create a DVR duplicate of Anthony's most recent victories. To be honest, I was a little taken aback by this man's ability to entice two really stunning women into his apartment. Having several DVR discs on hand, I replicated his daytime adventures. All I had to do now was find a covert place to drop them off. To be safe, I also made duplicates of all my old recordings on a different DVR. I made arrangements to have one CD sent to my brother Frank's house along with a note telling him not to play it, or disclose its source before I headed to the front desk, in case my plan failed or Shannon and Anthony learned of my plot and decided to take revenge. At least the DVD I supplied to my brother would reveal the offenders if they did anything. I happened to glance at Shannon at the time and saw she was almost done with her spa treatment. I made the hasty decision to check out the hotel and tried to find the rooms where the two women and their boyfriends were staying. While they were deep-sea fishing, their companions would undoubtedly be interested in learning about their activities. Before long, I saw the women coming out of the pool carrying towels, and as I followed them, I saw that they were returning to their rooms, which were conveniently right next to each other. This took care of one part of my plan. By tomorrow morning, if everything went as planned and Shannon and Anthony carried out the same routine as last night, I could completely ruin the rest of their trip. I went back to my room and gave the airline a call to find out when the earliest departure was. I scheduled it even though the earliest available time was 10 a.m., which was later than I had intended. Then I told the front desk about a sudden issue at home, which meant my wife and I would have to leave early the next morning. When I checked out at 8 in the morning, they were sorry and wished me well. I thanked them and went back to my room. I was now totally dedicated to my plan. If this didn't work out the way I had imagined, I would still get a plane in the morning and be home before Shannon, no matter what complications came up. If nothing else, I could give her the runaround before she gets here. But if by some miracle all went as planned, she would be stuck here for days or perhaps weeks, giving me plenty of opportunity to ruin her life. The strategy was simple. I would first allow Shannon to think that she had taken medication on me and pretended to sleep in order for her and Anthony to have a nice evening. Secondly, I would go back to the bar and watch, waiting for my chance to add whatever it was Shannon tried to sneak into their drinks. If I timed it right, they would fall asleep either right before they got to his room or right away. It was all about timing. Third, after they were inside the room, I would step in, walk Shannon back to our room, and then come back and completely deprive Anthony of everything. Anything he carried, including his wallet, cash, passport, credit cards, and clothes, I would take. Next, I would find the rooms of the two women Anthony had dated before, and carefully place the DVR drives under their doors, hoping that one of the women's boyfriends would find them first and watch the video. I knew that what their girlfriends had been up to while they were away would not sit well with them. The footage showed Anthony's license plate clearly, so they would know it would be easy to find him. Fifth, I would handle Shannon in the same manner as Anthony. All she would have left would be clothes and a handbag, and I would leave an accusatory note in her empty wallet. Now that everything was in place, all I could do was watch and wait for the players to act. At 5:30 in the evening, Shannon looked more radiant and at ease than when she had left. Knowing that I would never have her beauty at my side again made it painful for me to think about how she had ended our marriage. Glowing with happiness, she said, "Stu, thank you so much for the spa day. It was incredible. I feel like a whole new person." I noticed the glimmer of tears in her eyes and answered, "I'm thrilled you enjoyed it. Initially, you didn't seem too keen when I suggested it, but now I'm glad you did. I just wanted to show you how much you mean to me." With even more passion and emotion, she repeated, "Thanks again. I really enjoyed it, and I love you." "Anytime, baby. We've got dinner reservations for 7. How about we rest up and then get ready?" I replied. She nodded and took her handbag with her as she went to the loo. "Here, drink up. I want to go dancing tonight, so you better start hydrating now." She winked as she reappeared a few minutes later, holding 2 bottles of water, one of which she gave to me. All right, let me hit the toilet first," I said with a grin. After entering, I followed my usual practice, emptying the bottle and adding water from the counter to fill it again. After flushing the toilet to give the impression that I was using the space, I went back to the bedroom and resumed drinking water. Feigning sleep after 15 minutes, I watched Shannon get ready for her evening with Anthony and let out a faint snore. She went to the bathroom and turned on the shower without realizing it. I quickly grabbed her phone and checked her messages from her lover, taking advantage of the situation. She had texted Anthony saying, "I can't leave this afternoon. Stu got me a spa package I couldn't refuse." With excitement, Anthony said, "No problem, baby, I've got other plans. Are we still on for tonight?" Shannon's response, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to be with you, Anthony," infuriated me. As I read their exchange, I became a little less angry since I knew that they were almost done. All I had to do now, I hoped, was follow them to a bar, watch them dance for a few of hours, and then easily spike their drinks. I dug through Shannon's purse for Anthony's room keycard, pocketed it, and put everything back in its proper place. Shannon did something completely unexpected, and it took her a little longer to get dressed. She kissed my cheek tenderly as she sat next to me on the bed. "Baby, after this week, I'll be all yours. I promise. I just needed to clear my head before we start a family. I'm sorry I couldn't confide in you, but I had to do this. The next few days are for me. I couldn't risk telling you, knowing you'd leave me. But I need you more than ever. I love you deeply, but I have to do this," she admitted. I assumed she had realized I was awake, but then I realized she was attempting to assuage her own guilt. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said, "I love you so much, Stu." But that was too little. Too late. She soon had her entire outfit on and was leaving the house. I jumped out of bed, dressed, and trailed closely behind her as soon as the door closed. They ended up back in the same pub from the previous evening. Compared to last night, it was busier, and I even noticed 2 women from the beach walking with their boyfriends. They wouldn't be together in the morning if my plan worked. I was standing where I had been the night before. I took a seat and started using my reliable camera to capture the events of the evening. As planned, the evening transpired, and before long, they were sat at the table, laughing and conversing as the late hour approached. It dawned on me that it was time to give them sleeping medications. Making sure no one saw me, I hurried to the bar and spied an empty seat next to the area where the servers were making drinks. I watched them closely as I placed my beer order. I watched carefully and saw that a waitress took their order and quickly gave it to the barman. I took advantage of the moment when she put her order and asked another barman to place the identical order. I carefully opened a capsule and added its contents to each drink, swirling to dissolve the powder, as the first barman turned away to complete the order. With a glass in each palm, it mixed smoothly and fizzled just a little. I stepped around the waiter, making sure to keep the conversation out of sight. Luckily, there was plenty of cover from the crowded bar, so no one saw what I did. I moved away from the waiter so that she could bring the beverages to the delighted pair. I quickly made my way out of the bar and went back to where I had set up shop. There, I watched the waitress nervously as she brought them drinks, and I waited, praying that my timing was perfect. As it was already past 1 in the morning, they should stay unconscious until about 11, assuming the drug did its job as intended. If they could get to Anthony's room before they passed out, it would be perfect. They sipped their beverages gently, and my anxiety mounted. What if they failed to complete? Would there be adequate medications to produce the intended result? Then Anthony moved close to Shannon and spoke in a whisper. With a smile on her face, they quickly finished the last of their drinks and left the pub. Thankfully, they were hurrying back to the hotel, and I raced to keep up with them. I watched Shannon falter as she tried to keep her equilibrium and saw her start to stumble. Grasping her hand, Anthony draped it around his neck, holding her in place with his arm wrapped around her waist. As they made their way to his room, Anthony was also starting to show signs of instability. I timed the medicating of their drinks just right. All I had to do now was wait for the full impact. Shannon was barely able to stand when they arrived at his door, and Anthony was stumbling more and more with every step. He fumbled with the key card, trying a few times before he finally opened the door and staggered inside. I took the key card out of Shannon's purse and went inside after a short wait. I entered the room and heard Anthony mumble something like, "What's wrong with you, baby? You didn't drink that much." His garbled speech meant he would not be conscious for long. Shannon was already fast asleep when she lay face down on the bed inside. In an attempt to wake her, Anthony shook her. He murmured, "Come on, baby, it's time to have some fun," and then realized I was here. He stammered, struggling to stand up straight, and on the verge of falling. "Hey, who are you?" "Just her husband, the fool. Be a good boy and pass out so I can get her out of here," I replied. Just when it was time, he fell silently and softly to the ground. I walked over to the bed and saw his phone lying there. Curious about the texts and pictures within, I picked it up. Before long, I found myself reading through a plethora of innocent-looking photographs until I came across something more damning. He had a folder with many photos of women in various states of undress, some in intimate poses like self-gratification. I didn't recognize most of the women, but I did find several photos of Shannon in her pants and videos of her performing similar things. I realized as I browsed more that a few of the women were Shannon's school teachers and the spouses of multiple male coworkers. As I scrolled through his contact list, I thought, well, this is quite revealing. It appears Anthony has a penchant for affairs with married women. Things were about to take a nasty turn. I shared these pictures with everyone in his contacts, especially the husbands of the women he photographed, excluding my soon-to-be ex-wife. I sent pictures and videos of Shannon to her phone, then moved them to mine so I could use them later. When he gets back home, he's in for a nasty surprise. Identify it as insurance. I turned off his phone and then collected everything he had taken with him, clothes, toiletries, and other goods, and tucked it all into his luggage with a casual air. I also went through his pockets and took his passport, credit cards, cash, driver's license, and passport, knowing that he wouldn't be able to leave the island easily without one. After packing his bag, I faced Shannon, who was still face down on the bed with one leg dangling over. I gently turned her over on her back and took her up to our room. I laid her down on our bed and went back to Anthony's room to get the rest of his stuff, taking his wallet, phone, and cash as payment for all the trouble he'd created. I wanted to make sure he departed with nothing after going through his room in detail. I even took off his shoes and found a hotel skip on my way back. I threw his shoes and suitcase inside and covered them with garbage to hide them. I went back to my room and started packing my bag and Shannon's things together, handling her stuff just like Anthony's. All I wanted to take with me was the clothes on her back, her purse, tampons and other necessities, and her empty wallet with just the letter I had left behind. As I was wrapping up, I realized that I had to be at the airport by 9 in the morning, and it was now past 4. Shannon would not wake up until at least noon because she had finished her drink at approximately 2. I knew I'd be gone long before any of them got up, so I expected Anthony to arrive about 10 in the morning. One more thing on my to-do list was to leave the hotel, pick up the 2 DVR discs I had already recorded, and head to the rooms where the 2 women were staying with their spouses. I quickly and stealthily placed a disc under each door and headed back to my room. There, I was overcome with a sense of loss and melancholy as I looked at Shannon curled up on the bed. She had different ideas, and I was unable to forgive her, even though I had longed to establish a family with her. Once I was sure everything was packed, I grabbed Shannon's bag and followed her back to the skip to drop her stuff next to Anthony's. Once I was back in the room, I carefully went through Shannon's purse to make sure there was no cash, credit card, or passport inside. My goal was to make her journey back home just as difficult as Anthony's. Exhaustion overcame me as I collapsed into one of the room's chairs, but my mind was constantly racing with ideas about what to do next. When I get back home, I'll empty our debit and bank accounts before canceling all of our credit cards. I'll then pack up everything I own and leave our home. Though I knew I would have to hire a storage container for my belongings, I didn't give a damn. I just wanted out of our house and this sham marriage. Before I knew it, I drifted off to sleep, and upon waking, it was nearly 7 in the morning. Rising from the chair where I'd slept, I approached the bed, casting one last sorrowful glance at Shannon, before carefully lifting her and carrying her out of the room. Down at the pool, I settled Shannon onto a lounge chair. Since I was checking out, I didn't want her in the room when housekeeping arrived to clean and prepare it for the next guests. Returning to my room, I grabbed my suitcases and double-checked to ensure I had everything. I still had Anthony's phone, but then I had an idea. Returning to the pool, I retrieved Shannon's phone and began sending the photos and videos to everyone on her contact list. I made exceptions for her young nieces and nephews, but I was sure her parents, siblings, and colleagues would find them enlightening. At the front desk, I requested a piece of tape, which I used to cover the contacts on Shannon's phone battery, making it appear dead. I also made sure she didn't have a phone charging cord. Without money, it would take her a while to get the phone working. Just after 8 in the morning, I heard commotion and shouting. It was one of the boyfriends of the women Anthony had been with yesterday. Apparently, they were now soon-to-be ex-boyfriends. Watch the video I slipped under there. Tor Center, tell your family the wedding's off and I never want to see you again. Find your own way home, you cow. One guy yelled at his girlfriend. The other guy had a cold expression as his girlfriend pleaded with him. "Baby, please don't leave me," she begged. "I'm so sorry, it was a stupid mistake and you've already paid him back in full. You're a traitor. Go to your new boyfriend. He might have more money, but I doubt he'll be as forgiving," he replied coldly, sending shivers down my spine. I wondered what fate befell poor Anthony. Well, I suppose I'll never know. The next thing I heard was the ambulance siren halting in front of the building. The individual I assumed was the manager emerged from his office and swiftly escorted the orderlies down the path to Anthony's room. I sincerely hoped he was all right. As onlookers began to gather to investigate the commotion, I quietly hailed a taxi and headed to the airport. Upon switching on my phone, I noticed a voicemail. I accessed my voicemail and listened to a message from my brother, Frank. "Stu, what's going on there? I've received a flood of undressed photos and detailed videos of Shannon. I mean, I know she's attractive, but what's the deal? Fill me in when you get this." Arriving at the airport and waiting to board the plane, I returned his call and briefed him on the entire situation. How Shannon had been involved with Anthony while we were away and her attempts to conceive with him. Initially shocked, my brother thought I was jesting. However, after urging him to review the video closely, he expressed his sympathies and offered assistance if needed. After thanking him, I ended the call and soon found myself journeying home solo. Upon landing, I powered up Anthony's phone and found numerous voicemails and messages, many containing threats directed at him. It seemed the photos and videos I distributed weren't well received. Retrieving my luggage, I retrieved my car from long-term parking and drove home, brainstorming my next steps along the way. Although divorce was an option, I knew it would entail splitting our assets evenly, which didn't sit right with me, given Shannon's infidelity. It felt unjust that she could cheat and still benefit from a divorce. As I drove, another plan began to take shape in my mind, prompting me to mentally outline what I required and how to execute it. She had shattered our marriage, so I was determined to make her life miserable. Upon arriving home, I contacted my brother to assist me in moving my belongings out of the house in the coming days, ensuring Shannon returned to an empty home. Finally, I checked my phone to discover over 20 voicemails and a dozen messages, mostly from Shannon's sister and other relatives inquiring about her whereabouts and why she wasn't responding. I felt somewhat relieved that there were no messages from Shannon herself. She couldn't turn on her phone, so she probably hadn't realized what had happened yet. I chuckled at the notion that when she eventually powered on her phone, she'd be greeted by a flood of texts and voicemails, inquiring about the photos and videos she unwittingly sent. She was in for quite a rude awakening. My first task was to cancel all our credit cards and transfer our money from our joint bank account to my personal one. Then I began gathering my clothes and personal items. I wanted to keep any gifts Shannon had given me over the years. Gifts were promptly discarded unless they held significant value, in which case, I either sold them online or pawned them. Upon arriving home, I promptly switched off the home phone, directing all communication to my cell phone. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally checked my cell phone and found numerous texts and voicemails from Shannon. She seemed to have gotten her phone working again. Her initial messages inquired about my whereabouts and expressed concern, but as she realized the situation, her tone shifted. "Why? Why did you do this to me? Couldn't we talk first?" she pleaded in subsequent messages. Deciding it would only upset her further, I ignored the rest of her messages. The following day was busy. Unsure when Shannon would return home, I had to act swiftly. I purchased boxes to pack our remaining belongings and rented a warehouse large enough to store everything. Next, I visited the bank to deplete our joint account, transferring the remaining funds to my business account, which I planned to close and abscond with the money. But before I could depart for good, there was one more task to undertake. Our small starter home, initially intended to accommodate our growing family, would now serve a different purpose. Armed with my knowledge of construction and renovation, I embarked on a mission to make extreme alterations to our home, albeit in a non-traditional manner. Gathering supplies across the city, I prepared to give Shannon a visit she'd never forget. Later that morning, my brother Frank arrived with his pickup truck. After discussing my situation, we began loading my belongings onto his truck. It took over 5 hours and 3 trips to the warehouse, but by day's end, I had officially relocated. I kept my plans for the house, and Shannon surprised to myself knowing Frank would try to dissuade me. If he knew, he inquired about my near-future plans, just leaving town and this awful marriage behind. I won't file for divorce. When she returns, I'll be gone. She may keep the house, but that's all she'll get from me. Frank shook his head. You know this won't work. She'll find you and get a lawyer. Let's part ways and file for divorce. Running away will just make matters worse when she discovers you. Keep your emotions from impairing your judgment. Think about it. No, I answered. She tried to have another man's baby and passed it off as mine, get a lawyer, and give her half. She is deserving of nothing, and she will get nothing at all. I'll not get rid of her. I'll leave her broke and exposed for all to see. Frank understood that trying to persuade me was futile. I have a tendency to be obstinate, and once I've made up my mind, it's difficult to sway me. He departed, cautioning me to reflect on my decisions and avoid impulsive actions. Since witnessing Shannon kissing her lover, I've been contemplating everything. Now it's time to set my plan in motion. That evening I commenced working on the house and continued until the early hours. Uncertain of Shannon's return, I needed to act swiftly. The impending snowstorm worked in my favor. It was projected to shut down major airports, extending my window to complete the remodeling project. The heavy snowfall, adding an additional 20 to 30 inches atop the existing accumulation, facilitated my plan. Ignoring most of Shannon's calls over the past 2 days, I eventually decided to answer solely for gathering information. Please, baby, listen. It was an error on my part. A very stupid one. It was never my intention for it to get this bad. She begged, please forgive me. I'll do whatever it takes. I want nothing more to do with you, but I have to be calm. I gave her a glimpse of hope and then abruptly cut her off. Shannon, you've hurt me more than anyone has ever hurt me. Her cries fell flat on my ears. I'm not sure if I can put my trust in you or forgive you. All I need to know is why. Why did you treat us like this? Did you not adore me? Did I not suffice for you? I tried to sound cool, but there was a tinge of melancholy in my voice. I wanted to yell into the phone that she was just a cold-blooded person I would never see again. I should have given her the impression that we could make amends, I said to myself. Please, baby, allow me to explain. All of that was meaningless. To me, he was meaningless. To me, you are everything. My life is you. You are all that exists. She cried, please, oh God, please forgive me. I remained silent for a moment before answering. Baby, I'm just not sure. Though I loved you, you have wounded my feelings. No, darling. We'll mend everything. I'm not sure if we can mend everything. Our bond will be stronger and our love even more intense. All we need to do is get through this. Please, sweetie, wait until I get home so we can have a conversation. With desperation in her voice, she said, I'm not sure. When are you going to return? There's a problem, though. Neither my passport nor my travel ticket are with me. Since my credit cards were all taken, my sister is giving me some cash. Well, I see now. It's amazing how she went from begging for reconciliation to demanding the cancellation of her credit cards, I thought to myself. All right, I'll take care of it right away. Please call those credit card companies and have them cancel my cards immediately. So, when are you planning to return home? I believe within a few days. I'll be getting a new passport from the American consulate here according to our conversation. Tell me when you're leaving. Yes, please. Yes, Stu, I do adore you. See you when you're back home. I ended the call. This means she won't return for a few more days. Perfect, I figured. This would give me ample time to ensure my home renovations were completed and to take care of a few things to help kickstart a new life without her. The following day, Frank called to check in and invite me over for dinner. I accepted as I hadn't had home-cooked food in over a week, surviving on pizza and Chinese takeout. After assuring Frank I wouldn't do anything impulsive, Shannon called. Hey baby, I just got word that I'll be getting a new passport in a couple of days. Now all I need is a ticket home by plane. In a few days I could be with you and I could get home later in the evening if I take an early flight. Are we going to meet at the airport? I truly want to speak with you as soon as possible. Shannon, this might not be the best decision. Asking your sister to come and get you would be preferable. When you get back we can discuss, I said. I just played at her. Okay, baby, I'll be at least 100 miles away by the time she arrives. All right, Stu, I love you, and I think we can work through this if you give me a chance, she added. Yes, when we speak, we'll see. No guarantees, I replied. I deceived her just as she once did to me. Now that I knew when she'd be back, I had ample time to tie up loose ends before leaving town. First, I sold my work truck and bought another one used but in good shape, registered under a friend's name. Secondly, I had to inform my employees that I was shutting down the business due to my impending divorce. It was regrettable to leave so abruptly, but I owed them an explanation. Next, I contacted a college buddy now residing in Colorado. After graduation, he had suggested we go into business together, with seasonal housing needs. He promised steady work year-round. He was surprised by my situation with Shannon, recalling us as a perfect couple during our dating days. I inquired if he needed an assistant, and he gladly welcomed me, noting the surge and workload due to changing marijuana laws. I requested an informal arrangement to prevent Shannon from tracing my whereabouts or accessing any funds from me. Everything was arranged, and all that remained was for me to depart. Shannon called multiple times daily, professing her love and pleading for forgiveness. She provided daily updates on her return, promising lifelong devotion. Upon her arrival, the day before her return, I loaded my new truck and emptied the house, leaving behind only Shannon's belongings or items of no value to me. Departing early in the morning, I aimed to slip out of the city unnoticed. I asked my neighbor to record Shannon's return as a favor, promising to alert him when she arrived, hinting at a surprise. Unaware of our marital strife, he cheerfully agreed, awaiting my call the following day. Everything was set as I departed the city, heading south toward my new life without Shannon. It would be a 2-day journey to my friend's house, and by then Shannon would already be home. Along the way, I felt less angry and more serene than I had the previous week. Ever since I witnessed Shannon and Anthony together by the pool, it seemed like my life had gone down the drain. Now, however, I began to extricate myself from that pit of despair. Shannon called around noon and informed me she would be home the next day around 4 p.m. She inquired again if I could pick her up at the airport, but I explained I had errands to run and would return home after her arrival. She could just come in when she got there. Afterward, I phoned my neighbor, instructing him to be prepared with a video camera to capture the surprise I had planned for my wife. The following day, I was only an hour away from my friend's house in Colorado when Shannon called me. The house, it collapsed, just caved in on itself. The snow must be to blame. Just as I was about to turn the lock and insert the key, the roof gave apart with a thunderous boom. "Oh my God, our house is gone," she exclaimed. "Shanna, don't worry, your folks are probably still in their room waiting for you." I happily replied, "As for me, I've taken alternative precautions." "What do you mean our house is destroyed? How are you feeling so happy now?" She became irate. "Okay," I said. "My refurbishment went precisely as I had planned. I set everything up so that when you opened the door, the home fell apart. I used a chainsaw to cut the floor's nails and put up temporary bracing in the basement. The front door lock was wired to a switch that turned on a winch I picked up for a pretty penny at a pawn shop. The minute you turned the key, the winch activated, using a pulley and cables fastened to makeshift supports, and our house fell apart. You see, sweetheart, the snow didn't cause our house to collapse on its own. Similar to how you were involved in our marriage, so was I." I reset it and contacted my neighbor at that very moment, saying, "Stu, you won't believe what happened. Best of luck finding a new home. Your home just fell apart. I've got it all on tape, and fortunately your wife is okay. Must have buckled under the snow, though there wasn't much of it. At least not enough to cause this much damage," he exclaimed, beaming. "She was trying to open the door when it happened, and bam, the whole thing just fell in on itself." I asked him to email me the video when he could, as I wanted a copy of it. After the conversation, I powered off my phone and continued my journey towards a fresh start. It's been nearly 3 years since then, and I've managed to establish a comfortable life for myself here in Colorado, while I stay connected with a few friends back in Minnesota and stay informed about what's happening. I've avoided direct contact with family members because I was certain they'd disclose my whereabouts to Shannon. It appears Shannon achieved her desire and became pregnant with Anthony's child. Initially, she insisted the baby was mine, casting me as a neglectful father who fled. Sadly, even my own mother believed her narrative, eager for a grandchild. To resolve the matter, I reached out to a friend who then contacted my brother, urging him to request a DNA test for the baby, comparing it with my brother's DNA. If I were indeed the father, there would be a match. If not, there would be no resemblance. Astonishingly, she agreed. When the results arrived, my mother promptly expelled her from the house, vehemently denouncing her and her illegitimate child. Regarding Anthony, it seems he suffered severe injuries inflicted by those two men at the resort, spending over a week hospitalized before returning home. Upon his arrival, several other men, or rather ex-husbands, were waiting to confront him. He has since departed town for an undisclosed location, but rumors suggest he may be impotent. It seems his days of promiscuity are over.